This afternoon we're going to be in Daniel chapter 4. It's been a little bit since we've met on a Sunday afternoon due to scheduling. But we are going to come back into this study. Daniel chapter 4. The book of Daniel in its early chapters tells quite a bit about Nebuchadnezzar. We've studied it so far through 3 of these chapters, and Nebuchadnezzar was a man given to dreams. He had a whole range of wise men on his payroll in different disciplines of magicians and enchanters and astrologers and diviners. He paid a lot of attention to what dreams were trying to say to him. And I am sure that those that he had in his employment could only come up with nonsense, because they were none of them, as Daniel and his 3 friends were, of God. They were pagans. And so he didn't get much help from them, I'll say that. But God did use these dreams in Nebuchadnezzar's life. And this particular one we're going to read about here in chapter 4 is very much an individual thing for Nebuchadnezzar. Isn't it good that God will reveal himself to us? Even sometimes, like with this man, it was with dreams. But God chooses to reveal himself in many different ways to us, and it's a way for him to communicate with us. But this chapter is a very different chapter than the rest of the book of Daniel, and it is because this is written by Nebuchadnezzar. It's his testimony. But you're going to see that God had his hand on him. God was working within this man to reveal some things. God was working his plan where he allowed Nebuchadnezzar to bring Daniel to Babylon. I said it in Sunday school, God's never caught off guard. Nebuchadnezzar didn't go and kidnap Daniel and his 3 buddies, and then God said, oh, what am I going to do now? This was all a part of the plan. And it was about revealing himself to this man, part of it. We're just going to read one verse tonight as you stand to honor the reading of God's word, and then we'll cover the rest of it. But it's verse 4. It is so interesting. We'll read 1 through 3 in a minute, but verse 4 is, to me, the key. He said, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in mine house and flourishing in my palace. Thank you. You may be seated. So this is the attitude of Nebuchadnezzar as he remembers back to this occasion. He's writing about something in the past. You're going to find out in a minute why he couldn't write about it in the present. Verses 1 through 3 kind of sets this up. Verse 1 says, Nebuchadnezzar, the king, unto all people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. That sounds strange coming from him, knowing who he was in chapter 3, where he built his image, and he was going to kill the 3 Hebrew children by throwing them in a fiery furnace. And now he's saying, peace be multiplied unto you, all people. Verse 2, I thought it good to show the signs and wonders that the high God hath wrought toward me. He thought it good to just tell everybody what God had done for him and through him. And then he says this in verse 3, how great are his signs. We're going to find out more about that. And how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. This is King Nebuchadnezzar. His goal in life up to this point was to own everything, to be king of everything. And now he's saying it's God's kingdom, and it lasts forever. And then that's when he goes into that verse 4 that I've already read. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in my house and flourishing in my palace. You hear that? Mine and my. He was in a different place in verse 4 than he was in verses 1 through 3. So with that explained, Nebuchadnezzar had surrounded himself with culture. Now, there's nothing wrong with culture. God isn't against beautiful things. Beautiful things are a gift from God. When God created the world in its perfection, he said it was good. Remember that? If you found out that a friend of yours was in the hospital, would you take them a bag of potatoes and carrots? What would you take them? Why? They're pretty. They're beautiful. It lifts their spirits. I know the next time I go in the hospital, y'all bring me potatoes and carrots. I can already see it. Just to get a laugh, right? See, the trouble with Nebuchadnezzar was not only was he complacent in his ease, he was arrogant in his prosperity. He really believed he was where he was because of who he was. That he had done all of this to this point. And God's just sitting back going, well, let me tell you something. Let me show you who I am. So he made his culture and material surroundings into his own God. Now, we can throw rocks at him all day long, but we're guilty of the exact same thing if we're not careful. They became a curse to him, a delusion. Nebuchadnezzar had become proud of his achievements. We need to be careful because we too can fall into that trap. If our hard work has brought us some solid achievement or career success, whether it be academic, commercial, professional, or whatever, we might be tempted to think it is a result or even the reward because of us. I need to be careful with that. Now, worse than the complacency of the culture that he had built and the arrogance of the prosperity that he had built, it was the hardness of his heart. That was the key. Do you realize God had shown amazing patience with Nebuchadnezzar? Think about it. In each of the 3 preceding chapters that we've already studied, God had been revealing himself to Nebuchadnezzar in unmistakable ways through Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These young Hebrews in their faithfulness to the one true God in the way they ate proved that they were the best scholars of the year. Then Daniel was able to unravel a dream that he had with this image where nobody else in the kingdom could. And Daniel didn't take credit for it. He gave God the credit for it. And then, of course, the last chapter we studied, the Lord himself stood with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in that fiery furnace, and Nebuchadnezzar even admitted the form of the fourth man's like the Son of God. All 3 chapters, God's revealing himself to Nebuchadnezzar the king. And he can't see it. Or he didn't want to see it. Nebuchadnezzar was getting very, very close to reaching a point of no return. That's a dangerous game to play with God. To continually ignore His presence. There's a more harsh confrontation. There's a more harsh revealing coming with Nebuchadnezzar. Let's go back to verse 4. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in mine house and flourishing in my palace. Have you ever done that? Just went home, and that's what we're going to do, I think, right? We don't have any plans today. Man, my recliner's calling me. That's what he's saying, man. I was just relaxed in my prosperity. And then he went to sleep. Verse 5, I saw a dream which made me afraid. What? This is the dude that's king over the whole known world. This guy had hanging gardens that they call one of the wonders of the world. He brought in trenches of water into that desert, and it just, man, it was beautiful. And he's afraid? He had to be the most protected man on the universe. And he's afraid? Listen, when the God of heaven sends you a vision, it'll shake you to your bones. And the thoughts upon my bed and the visions of my head troubled me. But I thought he had it made. Money can't buy peace. Only God can give that. Well, let's go on with this story. Therefore made I a decree to bring in all the wise men of Babylon before me, that they might make known unto me the interpretation of the dream. Did we not take care of this in chapter 2? With the image? He said, I'm not telling y'all, you tell me my dream and then interpret it to me, and nobody could do it, and he was fixing to kill everybody. And Daniel come in and said, I can do it. So when he has another vision, and this one scares him, it shakes him to his bones, what does he do? Does he go to God again and say, Daniel, tell me? No. He hasn't learned his lesson. He's not paying attention to the fact that God is revealing himself to him. Fourth time that we know of that's been written about. There may have been others. And he wanted the interpretation of the dream. We still don't know what the dream is, by the way. We just know it was a scary dream to him. Verse 7, then came in the magicians and astrologers and the Chaldeans and the soothsayers, and I told the dream before them, but they did not make known unto me the interpretation thereof. Why? Because they couldn't. They were fakes. They weren't real. You have to laugh at verse 8. But at last Daniel came in before me. This is his words. This is the testimony of this king. He's admitting that at last, then Daniel comes in, whose name was Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God. He wasn't even calling him by his given name, his Hebrew name. He had changed it to Belteshazzar, one of his gods. And in whom the spirit of the holy gods, and before him I told the dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, master of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in thee, and no secret troubleth thee. Tell me the visions of my dream that I have seen and the interpretation thereof. He's still not on board. He's just grouping Daniel in with being a servant of one of the gods. Thus were the visions of my head in my bed. This is kind of like a Dr. Seuss book. Y'all notice that? It's rhyming. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Now y'all are going to be seeing it. I saw and behold a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height thereof was great. The tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to the end of all the earth. The leaves thereof were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and it was meat for all. The beasts of the field had shadow under it, and the fowls of the heaven dwelt in the boughs thereof, and all flesh was fed of it. I saw in the vision of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher and a holy one came down from heaven, and cried aloud and said thus, Hew down the tree, and cut off his branches, shake off his leaves, and scatter his fruit, lest the beasts get away from under it, and the fowls from his branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beast in the grass of the earth. Let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him, and let 7 times pass over him. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and sitteth up over it the basis of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now thou, O Belteshazzar, declare the interpretation thereof, for as much as all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known unto me the interpretation, but thou art able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in thee. I've had some pretty scary dreams. I don't think me dreaming about a tree getting cut down is going to be all that scary unless I'm either in the tree or I'm under the tree. So what was so scary about this? Well, I'm not Nebuchadnezzar. I can't tell you that. Because he says he doesn't understand the interpretation of it. Maybe that was the scary part. I don't know. Well, let's see what Daniel has to say. Because he's been called in to clear up this matter for the king. Because it definitely troubled him. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was astonished for 1 hour, and his thoughts troubled him. Wow. He didn't say a word for an hour. The king spake and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation thereof trouble thee. Belteshazzar answered and said, My lord, the dream be to them that hate thee, and the interpretation thereof to thine enemies. See, Daniel was human. Sometimes we put these guys up on pedestals. Daniel got a little shook up by this because he understood the interpretation, and he didn't want to tell the king what the interpretation was because this guy was crazy. And I think he was afraid he was going to kill him. And I think that hour, him just sitting there, he wasn't sitting there like, I think he might have been sweating. And he had that worried look on his face. And it's obvious Nebuchadnezzar knew the answer, but he could tell he was scared to tell him because he was the king. So he tells him, don't let this trouble you. Whatever you say, just let me have it. And what he tells him about those that hate thee and thine enemies, he's saying this interpretation, I'd rather it be for your enemies, because what I'm fixing to tell you is going to hurt your feelings. And I wished it was on them, but it's not. It's going to be on him. The tree that thou sawest, which grew and was strong, whose height reached unto the heaven, and the sight thereof was to all the earth, whose leaves were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all, under which the beasts of the field dwelt, and upon whose branches the fowls of the heaven had their habitation. It is thou, O king. He said, you're the tree. Kind of like when Nathan told David, you're the man. Thou art the man. He's telling Nebuchadnezzar, the tree in your dream is you. Now, y'all remember what happened to the tree. He got cut off. Thou art grown and become strong, for thy greatness is grown and reaches unto the heaven, and thy dominion to the end of the earth. And whereas the king saw a watcher and a holy one coming down from heaven and saying, hew the tree down and destroy it, yet leave the stump of the roots thereof in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, and the tender grass of the fields, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field till 7 times pass over him. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which is come unto you, my Lord the king, or come upon you, my Lord the king. Daniel said, I'm going to tell you what this dream means. It's about you, and it's coming from not the gods, it's coming from the high God. And he's coming to talk to you, king. So here we go. That they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and they shall wet thee with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over thee, till thou know that the Most High God ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. He's fixing to go live like an animal. Remember it said the heart of a man is going to be changed into the heart of a beast. When the dew falls, it's going to fall on him. He has no protection. He's a wild beast. That's how he's going to live. This is the king of the biggest kingdom in the world at that time, and he will basically lose his mind and turn into an animal in his mind and go live in the woods, in the forest, in the plains, like an animal. Verse 26, and whereas they commanded to leave the stump of the tree roots, thy kingdom shall be sure unto thee after that thou shalt have known that the heavens do rule. Wherefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable unto thee, and break off thy sins by righteousness, and thine iniquity by showing mercy to the poor, if it may be a lengthening of thine tranquility. This is going to happen for 7 years. That's why I keep saying it passes over him 7 times. Verse 28. And this came upon the king Nebuchadnezzar at the end of 12 months. So he had a whole year after he dreamed this dream, and it was interpreted to him. And at the end of 12 months, he walked in the palace of the kingdom of Babylon. The king spake and said, is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? Whatever effect that dream had on him to seek interpretation lost its effect, because for a year he walked around talking about how good he was. He didn't heed the warning of the dream. And he wouldn't admit that it was all about God and none about him. This is him still writing this story. Listen to verse 31. While the word was in the king's mouth, while he's saying, look at the beauty I have built, this is all mine, there fell a voice from heaven saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee. Who do you think he was hearing from? God. God had tried to show himself to him in many different facets, but now he's talking to him. Do you think he heard him? Well, he tells him, and they shall drive thee from in, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and 7 times shall pass over thee until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men and giveth it to whomsoever he will. The same hour was this thing fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar. And he was driven from men and did eat grass as oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hairs were grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. He was a sight. Now you may ask, well, how can this happen? The creator of the universe can do whatever he wants. He can make a man's hair grow really fast. And them nails can grow out really fast. He was a sight. He was walking around on his all fours. He was the king, and now he's out in the field like a beast. What do you think people said? He did this for 7 years. Verse 34, and at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up my eyes unto heaven, and mine understanding returned unto me, and I blessed the Most High. And I praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is everlasting, is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. He's singing a new tune, isn't he? He didn't adhere to anything God showed him, and then he didn't listen when God told him. So he had to go through 7 years of acting like an animal to come to the realization of who God really is. Well, to finish this up, and all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing, and he doth according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand or say unto him, what doest thou? I laugh at that because he just spent 7 years acting like a wild beast. And he's come to the realization God can do whatever God wants to do, and nothing humans can muster can stop him. But you understand, he had to go through this for 7 years to get to that realization. Amazing. Amazing. And at the same time, my reason returned unto me, and for the glory of my kingdom, mine honor and brightness returned unto me, and my counselors and my lords sought unto me, and I was established in my kingdom, and an excellent majesty was added unto me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, get this, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are truth, and his ways judgment, and those that walk in pride, he is able to obey. What a testimony. I'd have to say, no duh. Really? Wouldn't it have been greater if he'd have figured that out and not had to go through that? And we can sit here and throw rocks at Nebuchadnezzar, but listen, sometimes we're just as stubborn. We want our credit. We want our way. And we've never once considered, well, what's the will of God? And all too often, we run into a brick wall. And then we remember, oh yeah, God runs everything. God's in control of everything. He wants us to be obedient. It's much rather to be obedient than sacrifice. Remember that story? We've covered that Wednesday night with Saul. Another one of those kings that were hard-headed. Folks, I I wished I could stand up here and say, man, every time that I'm dealt with this, I nip it in the bud. I give God the glory and go on. I've spent some 7 years on all fours. Humbled. I'll not bore you with the details or shame myself with telling you, but just know this, Nebuchadnezzar don't have nothing on me. God has had to render me sometimes flat on my back to remind me, I'm in charge. You're not. That's a game you don't want to play with God, because God don't play games. He's serious all the time about this. And he's in control, and he'll show you. Sometimes he has to show you. I often refer to this with my dad as being raised by someone who was definitely in control of our household. But there was a few times that I tried to muscle in on that as I got older. My voice ain't deep, but it used to be a lot higher pitched than it is now. You know, when my voice started changing, I thought, I'm a man. Dad had to set me straight. Remind me who's the king of that house. Same way with God. It's much rather that we read his word, let his spirit deal with our heart. But if that doesn't work, get ready for the field. Get ready for the humbling, because it's coming. It's coming. But the good news is, at the end of his life, which is really sad, because his life could have really been different. But at the end of it, he does praise God. And it's amazing, 7 years out in the field like a beast, and he comes back praising God. Well, let's not do the what ifs. Let's take the time that we have available to us in front of us to be obedient children to our Heavenly Father, do his will. Folks, there's a lot of things happening. And there's a lot of opportunity. But we can't get the cart before the horse. We can't get in front of God. We got to follow him and do his will, not our will. That's the key. It's interesting. We've been through 4 chapters, and not one thing's been said about prophecy, but it's building. We're building the reputation of Daniel and those 3 Hebrew children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they're playing a very important role in this, that when the prophecy comes to Daniel, we understand why. God prepared him for this. He didn't just throw that on him. He was building blocks for Daniel to get to that point. And we'll be there soon. We'll get to the good stuff soon. But this is the important foundational things that gets him to that prophetic state. I appreciate every one of you for being here today. Blessings to all those that have birthdays in May. We had a bunch of them. Usually we have 1 or 2. We had several today. That's good. And I think as this church grows, we're going to have more birthdays. Right? That makes sense. More birthdays to celebrate every month. All right, let's stand. I'm going to quit talking. I'm going to have Brother JW, if you would, dismiss us in a word of prayer, sir.